What's your no one will ever believe this true story? My weirdest true story that's most likely not paranormal, waiting for a city bus one day, near an intersection. Perfectly normal day. Normal looking car drives past. As it approaches the traffic light, I notice there's a murder of around 30 crows flying behind the car, like one car length up in the air and one length behind. Car turns left at the traffic light. The crows turn left and follow it. Weirdest fucking thing. And I couldn't get my phone out in time to take a video. It's like if the crows were balloons on a 15-foot string. That's how tightly they were following that car. And it drives me crazy because I will never know what happened. Did the driver kill a crow? Was the driver a witch? What happened when the driver got out of the car, wherever they were going? I was camping in the Appalachian Mountains with 3 of my guy friends. We were all laughing and telling stories around the fire one night around midnight. The friend next to me grabbed my leg and pointed at the woods. We both saw a man's silhouette standing there. We called out to him, but he turned around and vanished from sight. We were 18, no cell service, and camp was all pitched up at midnight. Too late to search for another spot where we might get away from whoever it was, and too scared to search for him. We decided to sleep through the night there with 2-man watch teams. No signs of him for the rest of the night. We got out of the woods all right. 2 days later, 2 hikers were stabbed and killed by a mentally disturbed man who'd encountered them on a trail near where we were camping. Every now and then I wonder how close we came to having our cards punched that night by what could have been a knife-wielding murderer. Sweet older lady in our church was a retired nurse. Never married, no kids. She had a heart attack, and while she was in the hospital, her niece and nephew came and took her stuff. She had a modest apartment, but she had some very nice crystal and silver, and some lovely furniture. When she came home, she had no dishes and almost no furniture. Several years later, she passed away. Her most recent will, dated after her heart attack, left $1 each to her niece and nephew. Everything else went to the church. Just posted about it, but the worst date of my life back when I was single and on apps. I matched with this guy and he's super cute. He had a shirtless mirror selfie, which was usually a hard pass for me, but he seemed sweet, nerdy, so I talked to him. He tells me how he's really worked on his body because he was heavy growing up and really awkward with women. I'm thinking, he doesn't realize he's hot. Anyway, I'm homesick that week and bored, so we message a lot and even FaceTime, and he's quirky but interesting and kind of funny. He seems to be pretty smart. He's working for a biotech firm and applying to PhD programs. He tells me about how he has a daughter back home and ill, that she was the result of a one-night stand with a friend. That the friend didn't tell him he had a daughter until she daughter was 5. And that he barely gets to see her because she's being raised by the mom's friend. We wanted to meet soon. I dislike talking too much before meeting, but like I said, I was sick and I agreed to a late movie because it was midweek and neither of us had a ton of time. And we talked so much already. I kinda just wanted to be physically in the same room to see if there was any chemistry. We met at the theater, had a couple of drinks at the movie, and it was fine. And I was attracted. Second date is okay. But I'm feeling a little off. Something just feels funny, and I'm thinking this isn't gonna be more than a friends thing. We end up going to his place to watch Blade Runner, and I'm uncomfortable within the first couple of minutes. His apartment has weird vibes, like super disorganized, and he's hung an old beach towel on the wall as a decoration. WTF. We sit down and start the movie, and I'm getting more and more uneasy. He leans over to kiss me and I kiss back for a second, but then tell him I'm not ready for that, and can we please slow it down? He says that's fine and stops the movie. I look at him like He then proceeds to tell me he's in love with me. He's dumped his longtime fiancée who lives in L to be with me, and that he would like us to move in together ASAP and try to have a baby. I think he's joking at first, but quickly realize he isn't. He asks me if I will say I'm his girlfriend out loud, which I do, because I think about true crime I watch and don't want him to murder me. I feel like I show him I'm scared. He's going to freak out. He then asks me if I'm ovulating right now because it turns him on. I fake yawn and tell him I'm exhausted and it's a work night and I really want to see him tomorrow. So, I'm just going to go home and get rest. He looks totally crestfallen but says okay, but before you go, will you do me a favor? At that point I think I'm about to be murdered. I say, what is it? He asks, will you stand in front of a mirror with me so that I can see how beautiful we look together? Absolutely terrified at this point, I walk toward his room stupidly, but I'm just trying to placate him because my gut feeling was that he was likely not a murderer. Just insane. We walk into his room and it is a disaster. Piles and piles of clothes everywhere. We stand in front of the mirror, briefly, and then I say I really have to go, grab my bag and refuse his offer to walk me to my car. I then straight up run to my car. I got home and checked my phone, and there's several video texts of him touching himself which were absolutely horrifying. I shudder thinking of them. I now realize that the reason he isn't in his daughter's life is probably because the mother realized he was disturbed, and she had a very good reason to keep him in the dark. I get nauseated just thinking about him. I quit dating for a while and never put myself in another situation like that again. I was almost abducted. Went to a park when I was like 6 with my sister and my mom, and there was really nice man who helped me up when I didn't quite stick the landing at the end of the slide. My mom noticed him and figured he was just being polite. Well, my sister runs off to my mom for a minute, so I'm alone. I look up and see the man looking at me and walk around the play area behind the slides and by the pond away from view of the parents. I was curious, so I followed. He was crouched by the pond out of sight, and I remember tidbits, but I do remember he told me I was pretty and very mature for my age. He then was in the middle of asking me if I was only here with my sister when my mom emerges absolutely terrified and in a state of panic. Never seen her like that to this day, and I think that's partly why it was seared into my memory. The man ran when she started yelling, "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" I started sobbing because my mom was yelling. She never yells, but it took me a few years to fully understand what happened and what could have happened. I did have the stranger danger talk, but I just thought the man was so nice. That's all I really remember from that day. I'm 99% sure my mom reported what happened to the police, but no idea what happened after. When I was really little, my pediatrician went missing for 6 months, and everyone has really worries, but they eventually found him dead in a camping preserve. He had committed suicide. Honestly, he was a very good person. It was definitely heartbreaking, but we found out in his suicide note that he sometimes would inject water instead of vaccines into kids because something I forgot about. So there is a good chance I missed some of my childhood shots BC of this, and it's so weird to think about. Sorry if you've already seen this, I just enjoy posting it since it's so weird. When I was 12, I was walking to school, and behind me there was a priest who seemed to be walking with a kid a few years younger than me. He dropped the kid off at my school and started hacking at a toonie Canadian to dollar coin that was stuck in the ice. I wasn't allowed to go inside yet since I was a few minutes early, so I just looked at the toonie and wondered if he'd get it out. Then he looked up at me, made a joke about how I was never going to get it, and then he walked up to me, punched me in the gut, and then left. I was wearing a winter coat, so it didn't hurt that much, but it was still pretty creepy. Nobody at school believed me. Then I saw him walking by my house like every day or so, and I live across the street from a school, so I was worried about the other kids and told my brother who went to that school. He came over, and then I pointed the priest out to him. He was sitting on my lawn, and he said that he was one of the priests that worked at his school. I never once saw him actually enter the building. He mostly just walked around it for hours eating chips. They were mainly potato chips, but sometimes they were ketchup chips. I'm not talking about fries. When I was 16, I woke up into one of those very vivid real-life dreams. Like a dream where you wake up in your room and don't realize you're still dreaming. I sat upright in bed and looked sideways to my door and saw a figure standing in my doorway. The figure said, "Your dad will die when you're 22. Then I actually woke up. Laying in bed, too nervous to turn around and look at the door. The next morning at breakfast, I told my family, including my dad, about the dream. Everyone was uneasy, and then my dad said, "Don't worry about it. Now that you've told me, there's no way it'll happen. He died tragically and suddenly when I was 22. My wife and I went away for the weekend to a friend's wedding and left our dog at a kennel. So it's about midnight. We're having a good time at the reception, and I suddenly started feeling really weird. Super anxious, shaky, just generally shitty. Never felt like it before or since. Went to our room to lie down, checked my phone, and noticed a missed call from the kennel. Right when I started feeling fucked, our dog had a stroke and died. Probably not connected, and I'm the last person to believe in that spiritual connection crap. But man, the timing was uncanny. Man, I miss that dog. There's a mountain called Wolverine Peak in the Chugach Mountain in Alaska. It's about 10-ish miles round trip. About 15 minutes before the summit there is a small airplane wreckage off to the side of the trail. It's been there for decades and has been slowly pieced apart by hikers and the elements. We hiked up to the wreckage and I had a bit of a tantrum and didn't want to go any farther. My dad and brother continued up to the summit while I sat around the wreckage digging in the dirt waiting for them to get back. While digging, I found a clearly human tooth, root and all. Gave it to my dad to hang onto and he promptly lost it on the hike down. This was around 2004, and the airplane crashed in 1956. I was 6 or 7 years old, and for weeks I'd been feeling uneasy when playing outside. Walking to school or friends' houses, going to bed I felt wrong. It was winter, and there was snow on the ground. I couldn't sleep. This wasn't new. I've always been a light and infrequent sleeper. But usually I'd just have fake conversations with myself until I either fell asleep or my alarm went off. That night, for some reason, I was compelled to get up and turn on my bedroom light so I could read. After I turned the light on, I grabbed a book and went to my window bench to do settle in, and staring at me was two men's faces. To this day I could describe them to a police sketch artist. I ran to get my parents and when they came in, obviously the men were gone. My parents didn't believe me. So I went back to bed and didn't sleep at all. The next day when I went outside to walk to school, you could see two sets of footprints go into and from my window and tire tracks in our yard. My parents told me it was some kids playing a prank, but for a long time after that I didn't sleep till the sun started to rise. I'd spend my nights staring out my window. I have many actually, but this one just happened in February. I was stuck in Mexico because of COVID. I know it sounds like a dream, but what lead up to it wasn't at all. I had to go see a doctor downtown, then call Uber for a ride to the mall for groceries. The Uber guy starts driving, then pulls out a second cell phone and does some texting. He then turns to me and says he's not allowed to drop me off at the store's doors. He has to drop me off in a parking lot a block away. That's the rules, and his supervisor will be watching to make sure he doesn't go to the door. That's obviously bullshit, and I figured something bad was about to happen to me. So I told him I know another driver and was going to ask him. I lied, I don't know anyone. So I texted all the Uber info I had on the driver and his picture, then posted it on FB. Jick. By then we were getting close to the mall, so I said to him, my driver friend said what you told me is bullshit and you have to drive me to the door. He just looked at me with a smirk and kept driving. So I told him. He also had me send all your info to him, including your picture, as well as post it on social media. That's when his face fell and he took me right to the doors. I turned him into Uber. They didn't do anything. And my hotel. And when I got back to Canada, I wrote to the Canadian Council about it. They wrote me back and let me know because of my experience they have amended the warnings for visiting Mexico to include a warning about potential kidnappings like I went through. I've tried telling people this story before and people either think I'm joking or look at me like I'm crazy. I was probably 6 or 7 and, despite not knowing how to swim, went to a friend's grandma's house with him to swim in their pool. It's the 90s, adults aren't paying close attention, and the inflatable alligator that I'm sitting on floats into the deep end. Trying to paddle to the side, I fall in and sink straight to the bottom. I remember looking up and just seeing shimmering sunlight. I then reached up and felt a hand come down and pull me out of the water. Once I'm out, I look around and nobody's there. To this day, I believe I had a guardian angel or something who saved me.